very special. And it really is only because of the hard work that you all did. I know it wasn't easy, ever-changing conditions and circumstances and guidance that was changing sometimes weekly, coming from CDC and then through our Department of Health and Department of Emergency Services. But what you all did, it was nothing short of heroic. Leading your teams, leading your school districts, leading your communities, communicating with all of those. And that does not go unnoticed by either our office, our department, and or the state capitol. So thank you for that. We're very proud of the work that we've done. We're very proud of the ability to bring our students back in face-to-face. And that assures me that as we take this next step in this journey of recovery, that North Dakota will shine once again. We definitely shone during the COVID, and we will shine again as you plan for bringing our students to the level that they all deserve. A lot of work today here. I have a couple of team members with me today that will be here with you throughout the day to answer those questions. Obviously, Mr. Jamie Mertz, who is our fiscal director at the Department of Public Instruction. Jamie is the king of the web grants. He oversees that office, and so he will be the one that you'll be working with closely throughout the next 3 years as you submit receipts and for approval for the allowable uses. Of course, Assistant Superintendent Lori Mansky, who is here with you today. All of you know her. This is her 29th year at the department, and there is no one more skilled with more historical knowledge in this nation on federal grants and the ability and allowability and getting it done for kids. As any of you that have had the opportunity to work with Lori know that if this is good for kids, if there is what you want to do is good for kids, she will find a way to get it done within the allowable uses. And of course, Amanda Peterson, the Office of Educational Equity and Support, and Joe Koloski, School Approval. So they are all here today to answer any of your questions. The important work will happen among all of you, between and among all of you. That's where the best ideas come from. We just want to be here to provide your the technical support, the guidance, and answer your questions. So thank you to NDCEL, to NDSBA, to small organized schools for being that partner that you always have been with each other to make sure that the right people are in the right room coming up with the great ideas. So thank you, Amy, for allowing me some time. It's good to see you all. Call us if you need us. That's what we're here for. None of us have ever been through a pandemic before, and none of us have ever been through a pandemic recovery before. So we're all learning as we go. We're trying, our job is also to put some pressure on our U.S. Department of Ed to get you the information. God help them, they took office in January. The pandemic, did a whole transition of their office team, trying to get as much information from them and to you as we possibly can. We'll continue that, to do that. So please just let us know what you need. When you let us know what you need, then we can get it for you, and that's our job. Thanks.
So for some of you that may not know Alexis, I want to point out our School Boards Association Executive Director in the back. Thanks for all your leadership, Alexis. And Mr. Mike Heilman, he's our Executive Director for the North Dakota Small Organized Schools over there in the corner. Thank you, Mike. Lucky Duck just gets to assume a role on the NDCL board too. How exciting is that? The county superintendent. Woo-hoo. All right, so let's get started. Here's how I want today to roll. And oh, by the way, I just got a text message, thank you, Leslie, that their Wi-Fi password's not working. Apparently it's a small R on Ramcoda 1. So if you make that amendment, you can probably get into your computer a little bit better. So those of you that know me well know that I wander. You know that I like to get questions. I like this to be as interactive as possible. They're supposed to be getting me a wireless mic so that we can use this one to ask questions, but on every slide, just like in my Zoom calls, please don't hesitate to raise your hand or stand up, stop me, ask a question, because today, I don't want anyone leaving today with questions still looming. I want us to gut them out. I mean, we're going to come up with questions later, but the ones that are on your mind today, we've got Lori here, we have Jamie here, we have Joe here, we have all these people here. You got Alexis and myself, and as well as a number of brilliant minds in the room. So let's collaborate, let's figure this out. Let's figure out how we're going to do this well by our kids. But importantly, I need to highlight for you guys today, we made some promises to the legislature about how we were going to manage this money, and we need to honor those promises. And I'll get to those slides in a little bit because that's critically important. Because remember, these federal dollars are temporary. I I mean, assuming that Biden's not in office for 8 years, I'm guessing that they're temporary. Because federal money always runs out. For those of you that have been in education for a long time, you will know that we have bumps of money in the past, right? And eventually they run out. And what we have to be able to maintain is what we get from the state. And to get stuff from the state, we have to honor the promises that we made to the state. And that was that we would do right by our taxpayers, and we'd make good choices for our kids, and that we would make responsible spending choices. So that's what we're here to talk about today. It's going to be fun stuff. You're going to enjoy it. I swear. You'll laugh a little. You might even cry. Let's get rolling. Okay. First of all, huge kudos to DPI, right? They've done tons of trainings. If you guys have seen my array of papers up here, they're printed off trainings that DPI has done. They're guidances from the federal government. You'll see slides up here that you might have already seen, that Lori might have walked you through, or someone else might have walked you through. But then you take all that information and you have to put it into applicable knowledge. So how are we going to do that, right? Let's talk first about deadlines, okay? So we've had the ESSER 1 for a while, and our deadline to submit financials on that, first of all, it needs to be obligated by September 30th of 22. We're in 21, so you got a little time, right? You have until the 30th of December to submit your financials to Jamie. If they're not submitted by that time for ESSER 1, you will not be reimbursed. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. You got to get it done by then. So then you move to ESSER 2. Obligation is the same time the next year. End of September 23, obligation by end of December. And then you have your ESSER 3, obligation by the end of September, and your financials then by the end of December. Now here's the thing, guys, we have a lot of time. So please don't think you need to have ESSER 1, 2, and 3 all spent by the end of this summer. Because in strategy, you'll want to take your time, take advantage of the allowable uses, because for many of you, it is significant dollars that you can make some dramatic improvements for your kids for a really long time. You can have lasting impact. That impact may be in a variety of ways, and we're going to get in and dig in and start talking about that stuff. Again, here's those federal timeline requirements that have been handed out. You guys have had all of the information with regard to applications and when everything is due from the department. I think the most looming application right now is ESSER 2 application. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. That would be due by. Now that's kind of a longer application, so you're going to be wanting to dig into that. And I know some of you had already submitted, and the department had given you the opportunity to go back and make some amendments to that. We have through June 30th to do that. Here's a really big part of why today, am I correct on those comments so far, Lori? Big part about today is, today's the day to ask questions. You've got them right here, right? And then Lori's going to be with us at summer conference in a week and a half, and she's going to be with us an entire day where she can run small group sessions. So here would be the game plan. We want you, I'm sure most of you have already started drafting a plan. We want you to shore that up a bit over the next week and a half, and bring your subsequent questions to summer conference and visit with the team about them, so that you can make final tweaks before your actual application is going to be due by the end of June. Okay, what do you use those ESSER funds for? So far, any questions so far? Any questions so far? Okay, we're going to spend the morning going over allowable uses and brainstorming, and then in the afternoon, we're going to do some other stuff. It's going to be really fun. And then I get to get some of my business officials involved. They're going to teach us the magic. All right, so what do we use the funds for? There are the 3 rounds. Here's the cool thing. All of the allowable uses are the same. ESSER 1, 2, and 3. On your tables, I've set for you at least one for each district, and there's a few looming ones out here, so if you want to go snag another one, you're certainly welcome to. It's this thing that says Appendix B, LEA Use of Funds, ESSER 1, 2, and 3. This is kind of your Bible right here. Now there's going to be guidances and FAQs and things like that, but these are the things that you're going to need to have for your narratives. I'm going to talk about your narratives in just a second, but this is going to be your Bible, and in these Bible are power words that the department's going to need and want to see reflected in your applications so that they can feel warm and fuzzy about approving whatever it is that you're asking for. So this is really, really, really important. You want to hang on to it. I also have the links for it in here. I sent out the links. I heard that that link was broken I sent yesterday, so I'll quickly send that out again later today. Okay, so the state and the federal both have requirements of us. Now this is something that people are like, what? Well, okay, we have some narrative requirements and some reporting requirements I'm going to talk about in just a second, and they exist in federal law, but they exist in our state law too, because they enacted them during this legislative session. Your narrative needs to be consistent with what you see here. You have to find a way to spin your language to fit this. I'm going to be very candid with you. There's a lot of things that you can do with this, but if you can't tie it to one of these, they're not going to approve you, nor should they. All of you are very educated individuals, and I know all of you know how to wordsmith things. So you have to be able to tie whatever it is you're doing to COVID-19 relief in some way, and then figure out which one of these allowable uses it goes for. All three, like I said, can go to those activities, with the exception that with ESSER 3, you guys all know this because this has been the heartache for everybody, and everybody was like overjoyed with the presentation a couple days ago from Lori when we talk about the 20% set aside. Because when we start talking about interventions, and initially when we weren't sure if it could be anything we bought or anything we trained on, we're like, well, what in God's name are we going to spend that on then? Because the intervention is the human. And we have to train the human to perform the intervention, and sometimes they need a tool to do that. So thank heavens, and we're delighted to see the guidance that will help us with that. All of them can be used on expenses that go all the way back to March 13th of 2020. So for those of you, a lot of you called and you said, you know, man, there's a lot of things that I did then, you know, with maybe running buses and transportation. You have to be able to track that, but you can go all the way back and make up for some of those expenses all the way back there. Each of the grants need to be tracked and reported separately, but you don't have to spend one before the other. They can all get spent at the same time. So the reason that on our calls, I think Dr. Bitts has said it really well a number of times, don't get ahead of yourself. Right? Don't jump ahead and think you need to spend it all right now and reimburse it all right now, because there's strategy to this, right? Many of you have already been working on learning loss. Have you not? You've already been working on how to figure out how to accelerate the learning of your students. You've already invested a tremendous amount of dollars into your kids. So if you can tag back all three to March 13th, let's be really smart about how you budget that money to ensure that you use the 20% set aside for ESSER 3 as a first priority. And second priority is, we promised the state we would put some of ESSER 2 towards students too. Okay? We didn't say how much, but we said that we would put some emphasis. So there's going to be an expectation, and the department's going to have to report what you did, right? So as you're thinking about how you're going to use the 20%, let's think about some other ways. And now that that PD thing is in there, and mentorship is in there, you got a lot of other stuff, you have ways that you can strategize the reporting to the department so that we all come out looking glowing at the end of the day, and that's really what we want. And see, this is what I do. I set stuff down, but then I can't find it. Okay, each of the grants need to be tracked and reported separately. Let's move on. Any questions on this so far? How are we doing? Are we ingested? You guys have seen a lot of these trainings, but sometimes I also know that you need to see and hear it 2, 3, 4 times before it really sinks in. You need to ask your questions. So now's your time. There is no silly question. Okay, another important requirement. You have this community input and feedback requirement on your safe return to instruction plan. A lot of angst about this, right? Like, oh my God, what do I do for this? Well, for most, we've already done it. We already had to put together our healthy return to learning plan. Remember all those calls with Fran and everybody like that? We were having those intense conversations. You probably already gleaned enough bit of feedback, surveys with your staff, surveys with your board, surveys with your community. You did temperature checks on how do you feel about masks. You did temperature checks on how do you feel about this, that, and the other. That's community feedback and input. You need to collect that and be able to report it. If anyone has not taken the time to read the state ESSER plan, it's very well done, and it's a fantastic example. If you take the state plan and you drill it back and you do a similar modality, you approach it a similar way to how the department did, they did exactly that. They walked back about how we've conducted ourselves over the past, especially this past school year. They reflected the input that the department received in this past year. And then here's the kicker. So you get this feedback, you've already done it, you've got your safe return to in-person instruction plan. I would highly advise before you post it, take a look at it. Because some of you may have drafted it and since then have incurred some changes, like when the mask mandate was lifted and things like that. You might want to tweak it, then you post it to your website. It's due on your website by June 24th. That's this month. Okay? So you already have the plan drafted. Every one of you do. If you didn't get feedback, hustle up and get some. Get a survey created, get it out to your board, to your parents, to your community. Get as much feedback as you can. It's the electronic age, you'll probably get quite a bit. Okay, and then you can report that feedback. And then, after you have it up and running, it needs to be updated every 6 months through September 24. What that means is you and your board go back and you review it, you tweak it for any tweaks that you need to make at that time, and then you redate your posting on your website reflecting your update. Okay? How does this feel so far? It's the 24th. You have 21 days right now to get it up on your website. And I'll email you and remind you, and I know Lori will email you and remind you. We'll make sure that everyone's in compliance. But we just need to make sure you got it done. Okay, so right now I want to just check in, chat at your table, where you are in these requirements, and if you're not complete, what you're going to do to get it done. Because I want kind of a to-do before you leave, so you've got something to go home. So I'm going to give you 1 to 2 minutes, chat at your table right now about where you are with this, and what you might need to do before the 24th.
This is John. I already got the first round of feedback on the study plan. That's posted to the website already. And so we're going to move forward, have a look at it. Get ready to set the office, have a look at it. I think the LA that look at it and
yeah, I love the edit, so thank you for letting me use this. We have to fix the graduation. I did. Fixed it, but it for addition I think that's what a lot of people want. Oh, it did. I did.
Oh, thank you.
What can I do for you?
It's just not. We need to buy one and play with it and learn how to use it instead of trying to. Because this is a different one than what
That
we
we had
had
last time.
because we couldn't get the other one.
You know what? You're appreciated.
And my personal camera isn't. Yeah, if we're gonna do this, we need to invest.
Oh, I agree. If we're going to do it. But if we're not going to do it, if we're going to go back to not recording, then we just have to say from now on we're not recording.
Right.
Like, that just has to be the option.
Agree. So either we're gonna do it and we're gonna do it right, or we're not gonna do it.
I think we should not do it, to be perfectly honest. That's why we do it. That's why we do
Live events.
yes.
Yeah.
Get your ass here.
I agree.
Oh, perfect.
You get in fact 20 days off of that. If you get 20 days off, then you don't work. So yeah, relevant.
well, but yours only is okay. So that's not due till
Ladies and gentlemen, a quick clarification on the plan that's posted on your website. I know Ross Remick has been hounding a lot of you to update your plan and put it on your website. Use the same link that you have been using, because we connect that to the ND Insights dashboard. If that does not make sense to you, I'll be here to help you walk you through that process. Come find me. But it's the same link that you have been using. If you take your plan down and re-upload it with the new one, it'll be a dead link on our dashboard, and the feds require us to have that plan posted publicly. So if you have any clarification, come find me and I can walk you through it. Ross Remick can help you with that as well. So I'm going to make that quick clarification before we get any further.
what I did is I just changed the name of
Testing, okay.
board approved purchasing.
All right, Lori, Jamie, Joe, everybody, stop, Kirsten, stop me if we need to clarify something, we need to add something. I'm never offended. Well, maybe once in a while, like, I don't know, talk to my husband about that. All right, so far we're good. That was a great clarification. And you know, sometimes we just need multiple reminders on these things. There's no question about it. This is a lot of information. I now have a free wireless mic, so if people have questions, Trudy asked a good question in the break. She talked about, hey, Amy, you talked about surveys, but what about, you know, the public meeting we got to have for ESSER 2? Does that qualify as public input? Absolutely it does. Just make sure in your narrative you document that, right? Make sure in your narrative you document that. This afternoon, when we get into the down and dirty a little bit more on the financial side of it, I'll give you some tips on some ways that you can make sure that you reflect some of that on the acceleration into your ESSER 2 while still honoring what you want to do in your communities as well. So we'll get to that in a little bit. All right, narrative. This is stuff we're required to give to the Department of Public Instruction. There's no getting around this, folks. So the feds require that we collect school information in the ESSER 3 application in 5 areas. And here's what they are. How ESSER funds will be used by the district to implement prevention and mitigation strategies. Lots of different ways to do that. You can talk about how you purchase cleaning supplies, how you've done things to promote social distancing, how you've done things to promote student learning. There's just lots of different things when we talk about prevention and mitigation. How are you keeping your kids healthy? Maybe it's that you have a policy where masks are recommended, probably not required in our state right now, but recommended. Maybe it's that you're doing some initiatives to promote vaccination in your community or with your staff. Lots of different ways, but those are the mitigation strategies. How the district will use the mandatory 20% set aside to address the academic impact of learning loss through the implementation of evidence-based interventions. I hate the word learning loss. I've gotten a lot of pushback from the state on this, and I get it. Most school, your kids didn't lose time. In fact, I said this in my recording for the Governor's Summit, North Dakota absolutely way in the nation and paved the yellow brick road on how to turn the Titanic and spin it on a top and be able to, within hours, literally hours, I watched some of our districts go, oh crap, we can't have school tomorrow, turn on your computers, let's get them home, let's get them learning. And we learned to build the plane while we were flying it. Before distance learning plans were even submitted, many districts were already getting it done. So I get that there's not learning loss, but what we can do and what we always aspire to do as educators is push the learning of our students. So this is a time to take resources that we've never really had and try to do some things that we've never been able to do and you always wished you could to push the kids to the next level. And it's really, when we get to the 20% set aside, the emphasis is in the areas that really show us market student growth. And we'll talk about that again in a little bit. The third thing, how the district's going to use the remaining funds consistent with statutory requirements. I promise you we will show you today how to abide by that and still do some stuff at home that you need to do for your communities, okay? We're going to show you how to do that. And then how the district will respond to the needs of students disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, including students from low-income families, students of color, English learners, children with disabilities, students experiencing homelessness, children and youth in foster care, and migratory students. And you have to outline how you whip through each group. So you see these groups? I'd highly encourage you to create a spreadsheet and have each of these groups. You need to dissect your data and find out what kids fit into that. And then what you did to support and help them. Because one thing I do know about students with learning disabilities, moving to full-time distance ed was not good for them. Especially at first when we didn't know what the heck we were doing. We got better at it over time, but there's no question those kids deserve a second look. There's no question that in some of our communities where you had EL students that they struggle bus. Our high flyers probably by and part did pretty well, but maybe they didn't do as well as they could have. I had Taryn mention on the call yesterday about a subgroup that isn't even mentioned here. She said, you know, I was doing some data crunching and I noticed that my subgroup populations, the data didn't change much, but here's what I did notice. My typical students that were on the honor roll fell off and didn't come back on. And I said, that's an atypical subgroup, one that deserves your attention. How do you get them back, okay? And then how the district consulted with a wide variety of stakeholders in developing the plan. Okay, so here we've got, this is the stuff that we've done so far. I'm just gonna have you do a quick 1-minute check-in with your team. What have you done in each of these areas? How are we coming with this requirement? We can't get around these. Whether or not we like them, we can all complain about them, but we can't get around them. We want the money, we gotta do it. Ready, set, go.
I think we almost have to go back on plus minutes.
Was that all the snow? Right? They may, but then the salary increase would be a little lower. You know, so then we're not. We're just questioning us. Him, 2.6. What's the increase? We can get to the point where we're just saying what's the increase you're going to get. You know, and it goes here versus this step, then you know. I would be interested in a different salary schedule for the administrators. Maybe that's a study. But move school to 12 months, from 11 to 12 months to 11 months. You have 1 month to June, 1 month to July. You know, you have coverage. You have coverage in all our schools. And then the point would be your 11-month contract.
Okay, those of you that know me well know that I show sometimes so it got me to thinking, and it was a reminder that I sent out earlier this week because I saw Lori sent me a reminder. Send a reminder. I always love it when she keeps me on task. She's like my other partner that doesn't work in my office. So, and I was just talking to Amanda Joe about this. How in God's name do we do all the regular stuff that we're supposed to do to run our schools, and we've got all this ESSER stuff going on that's taking up all of our time? There's all this other stuff. And, oh, by the way, kids are coming back to school like at the end of August, and we have to teach them. And we've got all this stuff to do. So we're going to have to keep reminding you that there's some other backside stuff that needs to get done. There were like some school districts lingering out there without all of their title applications done. If you're not sure that you got yours done, you might want to ask the department, did I get that submitted? I think that Lori had a list of people, but just remember that I know it stinks because there's only so many hours in a day, but along with all this, we still got to get all the other stuff done. So just a reminder about other deadlines, other reporting requirements, other due dates. Those things haven't gone away. And I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, DPI team, there are no extensions this year, right? Deadlines are what they've always been, correct?
I sent something out today, actually. Due dates. So look for your email.
Perfect. Joe sent out due dates today, so double check that, print that out, put it in 15 places in your office with piece of paper. Then you'll remember. Okay. Now, here's where we get to the state side. In House Bill 1013, that's DPI's budget, there was a lot of policy amendments that got stuck in there at the end, having to do with ESSER stuff. Okay? So it talks about 2 narrative summary reports to the department. This is stuff that we need to submit to them, or they're going to be asking us for this. So now you might want to think about, like, okay, how am I going to collect it? Who's going to collect it? How am I going to make sure I get it to them on time? It needs to be information regarding the learning loss of students identified within the district, including subgroup gaps, school district plans to accelerate learning, recovery for all students, including closing subgroup gaps. I want to go back to this. It's just like bullet 4. You don't have to do it again. You just have to submit it in 2 different places. So don't freak out about it being extra work. The State Department has an obligation to tell the legislature what we're doing. That's what this requirement's going to. So copy paste, you're just going to have to move it into a second place. You need to include your ESSER funds by category. Okay, so how you spend them. By category, I assume that bill means the allowable use of funds. Is that correct? Is that how you interpret it? Anybody? That's how it seemed to be legislative intent-wise, but that's just what the law says. So by category. So basically saying, okay, well, I used this much of it for academic, I used this much of it for construction, I used this much of it for mitigation, you know, that kind of thing. And these impacts on learning recovery for the district students, these are the dates of the reports being due. And Sammy is sending out So you'll have all these there, and I know you have them in probably 10 other presentations from the department, but it's just really important that you remember these pieces. You can't let these things slide. Now, when they talk about how we approach ESSER 2, we did make a commitment. At that time, ESSER 3 wasn't granted to us yet. So what we were chatting about with the legislature was ESSER 2. Now, the law doesn't say to us, you need to spend so much on ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, but there was intent discussed at the legislature that we would be focusing funds on kids in one way or another, and that was going to be the heart of our intent. There's a lot of other things that we talked about too, so we just want to make sure that when we're reporting to the legislature that we're honoring what they asked us to do. Because it's important to note, we cannot accept funds, federal funds, without the legislature's permission. They have to draft a bill and they have to authorize it. So really, if we make them upset, we don't follow the intent that they gave us, they can very easily deny future opportunities for federal funding, and I don't think any of us want that. I don't have to say that they would, but the one thing that I know from working with the legislature, and I think Alexis knows that, and Mike knows that, you don't want to make them mad. It doesn't serve any of us very well. You know that per pupil payment we got? That'd be a goose egg of 0 if we make them upset. So we need to honor the things that we said were doable. Okay, what can I use funds for? Okay, let's go back to that sheet. This is good stuff. LEA use of funds. Okay, I love this sheet. It's so exciting because, seriously guys, there's like almost nothing you can't use these funds for. It's so much fun. I wish that I was in a school right now because I would be having a heyday. I get to spend somebody else's money. It's like shopping. And I love giving gifts, so that's really what this is. I'm giving the gift of learning and the gift of construction and the gift of all kinds of things to my community and to my students. Let's talk about what some of them are. Any activity authorized by ESSER of 1965, which is a 400-page document, so I don't really dive real deep into that one particularly, but I did spend a little more time looking at the other ones. So let's look at them together, because for some of you, this might be your first time with your eyeballs setting on this, okay? Coordination and preparedness and response efforts of local education agencies with state, local, tribal, territorial, public health departments, and other relevant agencies. So, when you were coordinating and doing preparedness, let's think about this deeper. What does that mean? Did you have to travel to coordinate with people around you? Did you have to go to tribal meetings? Did you have to purchase Zoom or any sort of capability to manage some of the communication requirements that you did? Document that you tied those things directly to COVID-19 and your opportunity to do number 2? If so, it's likely that the department would say, yep, they would bless that. But if you're questioning it, all you have to do is email Jamie and Lori, tell them your story, and they'll tell you, yep, that's allowable, or nope, I don't advise it. So it's always a cool checkpoint. I'm sorry to honor Jamie and Lori with 458 additional emails a day, but hey, we've all been there. Providing principals and other school leaders with resources necessary to address the needs of their individual schools. This comes in a lot of ways. Think creatively. You have a brand new principal, think about mentorship. You have somebody that needs additional tools, needs of their individual schools, think creatively. Tie it to COVID-19, tie it back to number 3. Create your narrative. It doesn't need to be a dissertation, a paragraph or 2 would suffice, but as long as you can tie it back, and you can tie it back due to the stressors or the lack of preparedness or the lack of time or the lack of space or the lack of whatever the heck, you have that opportunity. Activities to address the unique needs of low-income children or students, children with disabilities, we go back to that. Developing and implementing procedures and systems to improve the preparedness response of your school. Training and PD for staff of the local education agency on sanitizing and minimizing this spread. Purchasing supplies to sanitize and clean. Boy, foggers, you name it, right? All of your sanitation equipment that we, by the way, have really ramped up and done a great job with. Did anybody have a cold this year? I know I was probably partially to mask, but I literally have not had a sniffle since I had shingles. I didn't have a sniffle since COVID started. Planning and coordinating for long-term closures, purchasing educational technology, the list goes on and on. Okay, there's 3 pages of it. You need to sit down with your team, if you would, and go through these and start thinking about how are there's nothing in here you almost can't do, but what you have to be good at is going back to your academic skills that you learned in college and figure out how to tell a story. Hey, facts tell, the stories sell, right? You have to create a story about why this ties to COVID-19 how it ties to the number. If you can tell that story, it's easier for the department to approve it, right? If you can't tell that story and you just say, I'm putting in an HVAC system because our old one sucks, that's not going to work. You have to tie it to COVID, tell the story, and then Lori can feel good about it. Jamie can feel good about it. If they don't feel good about it, they're going to deny it, and they should. Because if they don't feel good about it, it would likely not pass the sniff test or an audit. So trust these guys. They're trustworthy. Okay? Let's see.
My two classes.
Okay.
It's going to be ESSER.
Now, the learning loss.
Because we had to have.
This gave us all gut rot for months. Yes. Thanks, Beth. Yep.
In the narrative, do we need to put the budgetary amounts, or do you do your budget separate and your narrative is just simply that without the numbers?
I'm hearing Lori nod at they are separate. We don't need to put that in the narrative. Great question. Other questions before we jump into learning loss?
Okay, I'm going to be asking for audience participation in this next one. I know some of you have already run good ideas by me. Really want to hear them. I'm going to, is Sam around? I'm going to pull the mic. You want to pull the mic, and we're going to kind of need to walk through a few things. I want to get some ideas from the field. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. All right, so here's what I advise. And this is just an Amy advice. You can take it or leave it. And that's with most of my advice. You can take it or leave it. But trying to create a plan on this, sitting on an island by yourself, is rarely a good it's just like when you want to do a new initiative at your school, and let's say you're the superintendent or the principal, and you've got this great idea, and you go in all pants on fire to your teachers and tell them about this great idea that you have, and they go, because it wasn't their idea. You have to build a team to implement an idea. It has to be grassroots, and it has to be what your team of people can agree upon is the right thing for your school. And what's right for Sean and Wishick is not going to be right for what Scott's going to see in Grand Forks. What you guys see in your districts are going to be different. The needs are different. So pull together a team. And here's kind of the ones that I thought of. And this, I reflect this off, I don't know, some really wonderful thing that was linked 13 times through the guidance. But it was really good. And I have it printed out up here, and I'll share it with you in just a second. But here was a team, and I really like this. They talked about superintendents and principals, at least one district staff member from a core area. I would get more teachers on there if I were you, because if we're talking about learning loss, and the people that actually have to perform the intervention, it's our teachers. So they need to have a hand in this. Someone from your SPED team, someone from your EL team, someone who's good at data. There's got to be someone in your district that's good at data, that likes it. Like Russ likes it, I don't understand. But he does, he really likes it. And then someone who leads PD or PD prep, okay? That's a great start for thinking about who your team should be. So I know that that's maybe not necessarily the people sitting at the table, because we said today it should be superintendents, business managers, and our board, a member from our board, but that's okay. This is probably a good idea of a team to start with, and some of you probably already have this team in place. Because, remember, we had to go back into those distance learning plans, and you pull the team together to do that. I would imagine that team might be the base team for you here. So what kind of data should we be gathering? Because before you build a plan, you should probably know why you're building it. And you want to collect some data and understand what's going on in your groups, because all these requirements keep talking about these particular subgroups. That's a good start on how you would check out your data. And then you get these subgroups, and here's what you should be probably looking for. Chronic absenteeism, discipline rates, and discipline in ways that you might not think of initially. Like, gather information, anecdotal information from your teachers. They know it. Like, who was falling asleep in front of the computer? Who was, odd behaviors? Those are ways that you had to discipline. I know I heard from a lot of people that discipline was really down this last year. The kids were really good. And that's great. I think it's because they really missed each other. I know I missed you guys. I remember the first time that I got to see a whole bunch of school administrators in a room. It was at the budget thing back in March. I literally cried. I was so excited to see real students. It was great. I think our kids felt the same way. Key data from strategic plans. Okay, you already have strategic plans in your district. It would be great to gather that key data, because that's what's going to make this district relevant. Your ratio of students to nurses, to counselors, to social workers, and to psychologists. For those of us in our small schools that may not have that, you might want to think about contract services that you have available at your fingertips. And then again, that atypical one I mentioned a little bit ago, students who've fallen off honor roll and have to come back. Atypical data that your academics in your school, your principals, and your teachers are paying attention to that might not readily show up on a certain assessment, right? YRBS data is another good one to take a look at. I get that it's not going to be individualized by students, but you will see trends. And it might help shape what you might want to do. Okay, so what do we do with this? I know it's June, but I put May to June. Ongoing process. Remember, we have through 2024. Like, you might still be working on this for a while. So here's an idea of how this could roll for you. This is just a suggestion. You don't have to do it this way, just a suggestion. So right about now, establish and set your team expectations. Get your team together, figure out what you want to do. Understand your current state of student learning. You guys, I know, have been digging into your STAR and ESSER data already. I've been hearing you all talk about it. You talk about it on the calls. Set vision and goals and gather public input. And then develop your work plan for the summer. So what could that look like? June and July, you can prioritize how you might handle unmet standard skills. So I was just having a conversation last night. I was actually with Aaliyah's 5th grade teacher, and she was talking about the didn't get met in her school this last year, in her classroom, and it's bothered the crap out of her, but for whatever reason. Those are the standards and the skills that weren't met yet. How do we accelerate the learning of those kiddos? So if my kiddo's a 5th grader, how do the 6th grade teachers respond to it and catch them back up? You can't go back and replace that time, so you almost have to inform the teachers that they're getting what they're missing. Because they can't just assume and go in. Otherwise, if I was still a high school English teacher like I once was, and I didn't have someone tell me before, like, hey, we didn't get to, antonyms, I wouldn't go back and do that. I remember doing a training once down at HMB. This was in my early days, and I was sitting around, these were Common Core days, eek, red shirts. Yeah, Kirsten. Do you have the mic? Sammy's got the mic.
The Department of Construction used some of their ESSER 1 set-aside funding to fund work on the unmet standards through our REAs. So we provided funding to our REA Association, and there is a tremendous amount of work that Jennifer Glashane and Aaron Lucina have been doing. And so that work started in February, and there are, I think, about 20 school districts that have engaged in that work to try and get those unmet standards for the spring semester, or the last 9 weeks of the spring semester. We are funding them again to continue that work. So as your school districts are working to identify what are those priority standards, what is unmet and unfinished, reach out to your REA and find out if your school district is interested in engaging in a team in that work. Reach out to them, because the REA, we're funding that, and the REAs are doing that work.
Okay, so they would need to reach out to Northeast and to Southeast, or any REA?
Any REA, because this is a statewide effort. We funded it as a statewide effort, so any school district in any corner of the state can just reach out to your REA and ask about that, or just reach out to me, to Lori, to Amanda, and we'll get you a call.
Thank you. That's awesome information. That's awesome information. So
Spot On offers a slick point of sale system and everything else you need to get.
Sometimes we forget how this unmet standard thing has been going on long before COVID. Long before COVID. I'm gonna go back to my story because it's a good one, because I like to tell stories. So I was down at HMB for this training, and I was sitting with a whole bunch of English teachers because I was talking about Common Core and ELA, and the high school teachers were just PO'd at the junior high teachers because their high school kids did not know how to take notes.
Celebrate the
Junior high teachers, and they were just PO'd that their junior high teachers did not know how to take notes. They were just mad at those elementary teachers. And the elementary teachers were like, what? And I'm like, guys, have you missed the boat here? If you notice the kids don't understand how to do something, it then becomes your job, no matter what level you're at, to teach them. So I have a student that's a high school senior and doesn't know what a noun is. Well, so sad they don't know what a noun is, but I guess it's my job to teach it then, isn't it? Unmet standards have been going on forever. But this is a silver lining, right? So who's ever done this work for us? That's awesome the REAs are doing that work, because I don't know a teacher that has time to do it, really. And that's why it keeps sliding, right? That's why we talk about our kids when they're doing so good, and then all of a sudden through 4th or 8th grade something happens. Probably has a little bit to do with this. And so this additional support is a silver lining. Develop scope and pacing and sequencing guides. If you've never known how to do this, not like I should be offering up district stuff, but take a snapshot of what some of our districts For example, Bismarck Public Schools is a shining example of what district-wide pacing guides can look like. How they help everybody kind of stay on pace so that you know that all the kids are getting the information they need before the end of the school year. I know there's other districts doing that. I just live in Bismarck, so I happen to hear about it more often. But that's something to think about. And, by the way, I'm going to reflect on the legislature for a little bit. In House Bill 1388, if any of you are going to do a virtual academy, you're going to have to know how to do a pacing guide because it's required in there to be able to take attendance. So if you want to know more about how to develop pacing guides and things like that, that's a subsequent conversation. And then begin to plan support staff. What does this look like? What do you need to do? Do you need to add staff? You've probably been approaching that concept to do it already, but don't freak out if you haven't yet. You've got until 2024, guys. You might find that you jump into this year, and through the year you're going to learn, like, dang it, I need another school nurse. Or I need to have more services from the village. Like, my kids are struggling. You'll figure that out and you can implement those later, but you need to start continuing to think about that. What PD do we need? Like, you might still have some kids that need some extraordinary help. What kind of professional development do you need? I don't think any of us, when we went to school, that we were trained to do this. And if you are, when you're green, you're growing, and when you're ripe, you're rotten. You've got to keep growing as an educator. So what PD do you need? What curriculums do you need work on? Remember, in House Bill 1388, there's required reading curriculum. And if you think that just having like guided reading is the seal the deal for 1388, it's not. It's one piece of the puzzle, but you have to make sure you're hitting on every single one of those components that's listed in the bill. Phonetics, literacy, yes. So, let me get the mic. See how many steps I can do today.
So if we put this team together and those people aren't under contract this summer, we can pay for them with ESSER funds and stipends.
Right, you can. Directly COVID related, absolutely a great staffing cost. Yep, that's one of those beautiful things, and I think that some of our folks have been doing that for a little while. Great question. In August, finish up these scope and sequence guides, or keep working on them through the year, because this might be a brand new activity for you and it's going to take a while. And gut check against the standards that still need work. So if you've reached out to your REAs, you're figuring this out, gut check against what you need to do in your district, and then finalize your acceleration and support plan. So like what you're going to do, at least finalize for the year. And you don't need to do this alone. Reach out. Reach out to your REA, reach out to NDCEL, reach out to school boards, reach out to NDSOS, DPI. There's lots of groups out there ready and hanging in the wait to help you out. Okay, so here we go. You got all this stuff going on. You've trained your staff. You've got back to school orientation. Don't forget, back to school orientation and the training that you do to prepare them is a response to COVID-19, so you can cover some of those PD costs when you're getting them back to school. That can be an allowable. September, evaluate how your plan's going and then make adjustments for what the type of PD that you need. Just an example of different PDs coming up, you've got MTSS conference in June. Remember that 20% of that set aside is about that mental health supports. MTSS conference is a fantastic one to go to. You've got summer conference coming up right after where we're talking about equity and biases, and that's all dealing with our subgroups. Okay? You've got boot camp, critical one to come to boot camp. We're going to be doing some pretty amazing stuff. DPI and NDCL partner boot camp. Are school boards and DPI partnering this summer too?
Yes.
Yep, you've got your partnership conference going up, and then you've got the super conference in October, where again, we're going to have all the gajillion and 2 breakouts, wonderful keynotes, and all that information available to you for the entire year like we did this last year. Okay, essence-based practices that maximize students' social, emotional, and academic. So let's talk about what some of those are for the 20%. Can be creating a framework for meeting these needs. Example, an MTSS framework. I'm sure most of you have this going on in your district. If you don't yet, now's the time. If it was ever a deal where, oh, expenses, I just can't do it, or oh, I can't afford to train my staff up because I need to bring them in for extra days. Most of you should have the funds now to be able to do that. I get that we had 14, I think, schools that are not Title I schools that have a shorter amount of funds, but you have some. Building strong and trusting relationships among students, families, and educators can be allowable. Establishing safe, positive, stable environments. Explicitly teaching social, emotional, and academic skills. And I am not pulling this stuff out of my rub roast. Not. This comes all out of the Department of Ed, COVID-19, return to school school notebook. All these samples. So if you haven't printed this bad boy out, volume 2, it's a really good resource. It will help guide you. It will make Lori and Jamie's job so much easier, because if you're following this, it's really easy for them to say yes. Because if you use an example from the book, it's directly from the feds. Continued social emotional. And then we're going to take a break in just a second. You're going to be able to brainstorm with your teams. Actively engaging students in meaningful and culturally and linguistically relevant learning experiences rooted in high academic expectations of all students. That's a lot of fluff language. You can make a lot of things fit into that. But you got to figure out what your needs are with your kids. Providing supportive and specific feedback to encourage skill growth. Providing access and support from school counselors, psychologists, and trusted staff members. If you want to add counselors and psychologists, this would be a good time to do that. With caution. Do you have a plan to backfill their salaries when COVID money runs out? Or will you plan to rip them? Or will you find another way? Have you gotten enough buy-in from your community through your public surveys and your input that they're going to be okay with another mill on their tax levies to help backfill some of these positions that are going to be critical to the success of your students? I'll tell you, they might not be now, but if you start the dialogue now with your communities, my guess would be by the end of 2024, they'd be there with you. They just got to get used to the idea, and they're only going to get used to the idea through communication and transparency. And they want to see results. So as you see positive results from the adding of some of these people, they'll come to understand how integral that they're going to be to continue the student growth and the student positive outcomes. Establishing building level wellness teams to address SEL needs from both students and staff. Some districts have really established strong SEL programs in their schools. Some of you haven't dipped your toe in the water yet. I'm going to allow you some time to cross-migrate a little bit here and talk to each other. I know there's a number of districts that have strong SEL programs. You might want to talk to each other and figure out, what are you doing, why does it work for you, and why might it work for me in my district? Okay, and then what are appropriate interventions for acceleration? Blah, 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 learning loss. Let's talk about accelerate. So there's in-school acceleration. Okay, there's things that we do in school. I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of those. We're going to brainstorm. There's tutoring programs, out of school time programs, and summer learning and enrichment. These are the things that the feds really focus on. Okay? In school, I'm going to go through some of the examples they give, and then I'm going to ask some of our folks in the room to tell me. I know some of you come up with really good ideas, and I'd like you to share if you would. So get ready. I texted some of you prior to today saying, hey, be ready to share. Ensuring educators have time to learn new instructional strategies. That gets to the point of what you just said. Hey, so if I want to build this team, or I need people to come in and work over the summer, or I need them to have extra time, ensuring that they have time to learn new instructional strategies. Time is what? Money, right? You got to pay people for their time. Albeit, most of us in this room have dedicated and donated the better part of the last 18 months to this process without necessarily anything additional. We need to ensure that our staff is compensated for their time. So that's time to learn new instructional strategies. But it might not be just giving them an extra day. Maybe it's finding a way toward an extra prep. Maybe it's using days to hours to build in time in your calendar to give them the time to work. Many of you through COVID that when you were in distance learning took every Friday off, maybe every other Friday or one Friday a month to give them time. Give them time. Sometimes you've got to give them time without kids in the room. Because when the kids are there, they just can't have the time to learn and to get better and to grow. Using high quality assessments, STAR, math. Interim assessments are critical. I get that the legislature got rid of the requirement to use them, but I haven't heard from one district leader that says that they're not a good idea. It's the best things we have out there that are norms that can help inform instruction. So continue to do what you're doing so that your teachers can continue to see where their gaps are. Making time for teachers to collaborate across grade levels, paying teachers to come back early, prep time after school. Like you don't have to give them necessarily an extra day. What if you pay them for an extra hour at the end of the day? You know, you get out of work, they got to be out in the school till 3:30. What if you made it 4:30 and you paid them for it? Gave them extra time. Or give them the choice, flex it. Say you can come in an hour in the morning or see an hour after. I'm a morning person in the summertime. When I've got someone at home to watch my kiddos, I'm at the office somewhere between 4:30 and 6. Just depends on if I got to walk in the morning or not. Because I just do better in the morning, so flex it out. Be flexible. PDL, project-based learning. To plan good PDL takes time. Dual credit costs. Most of you know that dual credit's my thing, right? If you ever listen to me in the legislature, I go a little bananas about it. That was what my dissertation was on. If you can find a way toward more kids getting more opportunities for dual credit, it is the one thing you can do for them that will save them money for their entire life. It is the college education you can get. And the kids that get to participate in it are more likely to succeed in college. Because they already have the tools in their tool belt to succeed, because they had it under the tutelage of the people they trust the most, the people at their high school. So if you can help more kids, and oh, by the way, we talk about those subgroups. Oftentimes those subgroups are hindered with poverty, and affording dual credit is incredibly difficult. There are ways that you construct fair ways to help monitor them in this way, and that's a way to build equity, right? Helping them overcome some of their obstacles. Sometimes the chief obstacle that our kids have is they don't even have money to have breakfast in the morning. So USD has done a great job of making sure we have food at school, but what other obstacles did poverty bring to our kids and put them at a disadvantage? Think about those things. More in school, CTE and work-based learning. This can include transportation to CTE centers. Ramp up those CTE things now. Get better equipment. It's allowable. It says it right in the guidance. Career and Tech Ed data shows is one of the best ways to help our kids grow. With our indigenous populations, there's data that shows that's one of the only things that's actually shown dramatic impact for our Native American student populations is participation in CTE coursework. That has made a real difference in their learning. Ramping that up, expanding that, gives them a better opportunity to participate. And then you couple that with some of the opportunities that we have coming at you from the legislature and through our learning continuum and the frameworks and how you can build your coursework and combine it so much better with career and tech ed. The future is so bright. And now we've got the money to actually do it. And that's a good thing. Support and complete the FAFSA. Have any of you done the Federal Application for Student Aid in a while? That's horrible. Consider having someone in your district pay to help the kids fill it out. Do parent and kids night. Bring them in, help them fill out their FAFSA. Get someone that's good at it. Maybe it's a local accountant. Because I remember when I was going to college, my dad's accountant filled it out for us because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Get someone to come in and help. That's something that will help them. That's a bridge to college. Tutoring. Tutoring. Hey, you know how our teachers are all burnt out and they don't want to do anything this summer? Anybody heard that? I know my husband is. He got asked to tutor and he's like, why is it at the lake? But you want to know what people can tutor? High school kids can go tutor elementary kids. And they really appreciate a good summer job. And that's one thing doing air conditioning. High quality tutoring. Get some of your AP kids to come down and help some of your elementary kids that have struggled. Some of our elementary kids really struggled in distance learning. It's hard to do elementary curriculum in a remote environment. They need a little help. Great place to do it. Other high quality tutoring can happen in other environments. Sylvan, you can have your teachers doing it. It's a great time for opportunity for them to put in a little extra summer money and for those kids to help catch up. Okay, list the things you're doing in your school. Those are important. All right, so I did in school, then we'll talk about out of school, but pause for just a second because I need to drink my coffee. Talk at your tables for about 2 minutes about in-school ideas that I might not have mentioned that you think might be allowable. And if you have questions, now's the time to ask.
You guys been pondering what you're going to do? 20% goes for me. Here's a learning loss. So 20%.
Ready, set, go.
we? Okay, lucky 13. You don't want to go lucky.
I feel like we need a break.
Well, we get a boss not get
Why don't we take a quick bio break? We'll come back and get started in 7 or 8 minutes. At 11:15, I'm going to kick off again. So this gives you a chance for a quick bio break, and we'll be back.
So, how much final loss is it? I want to know. Is it going to find a lot?
I'm going to ask Lori to come up here. We're going to talk, before I jump into out of school stuff, I want Lori to come up and we're going to talk about some deadlines and stuff. I'm missing my conference call. Yep, he said, they didn't get forced all year, and the kids
Okay, I'm going to have Lori start taking over, so let's find your seat. And Lori's going to go over some important deadlines, some other important information. Before I have the mic to her, wow, what an amazing job that Lori's done trying to decipher this stuff for us, helping out. She's just been tremendous, as has her team at the table, Joe and Amanda and Jamie, and everyone's just been so great. And I know that things sometimes get frustrating, but through all this, please don't forget to extend grace and that gratitude, because these folks are working every bit as hard as you are. Their job description might be a little different, but for every question that you have, they've heard that same question probably 300 times and have answered it with grace and patience, and we're just so thankful for that.
Thanks, Amy. And you have. We've mentioned that a lot, that when everybody calls, they're very understanding that, everyone at the school level, at the department level is overwhelmed and has everything to do. So thank you. Everybody has been very gracious. So this is obviously super helpful, and Amy's done a great job of highlighting those deadlines with, the next important deadline is that June 24th, because the law said that we had to get those plans posted on the website within 30 days of getting your ESSER 3 funds. Well, as you recall, what they go by, what that means, getting your ESSER 3 funds, was the day that we signed the grant award and provided it to you, which was May 24th. So that's how that June 24th date came about. So that's the first deadline to meet, is that plan. And again, you can revise it later. So you have the plan, just get the plan posted by June 24th. And then Amy also talked about the ESSER 2 deadline of June 30th. Again, we extended it so that you can come to this training and go back and make some updates. And so we'll get you some reminders, not too worried about that. That's several weeks away. But what I wanted to just highlight is the ESSER 3 process, because I know it's kind of confusing, and having that ESSER 2 and 3 come in at the same time is a little overwhelming. So with ESSER 3, we had to have that 2-phased process, and we had to have that because of the federal requirements that we get those grant funds out to you by May 24th. There's just no way we would have been able to do a full-blown application and have you submit that by May 24th. And this is pretty much what all the states did. So in order to meet that deadline, we just had you complete a very simple application, basically just a set of assurances, and it was called the ESSER 3 initial application. And so that one is due right away. The sooner we can get those in, get those approved, the better. And also, so you submit your ESSER 3, that simple application, and then you log into Web Grants and sign your contract. Contract grant award means the same thing in Web Grants. They're all there, they're all signed and waiting for you. And so right now, there are 44 districts that have still not completed phase 1. And so again, we have some time with ESSER 2. What we ask you to do when you go back from today's meeting is make sure you have submitted that simple assurances document, which we call the ESSER 3 initial application. Log into Web Grants, make sure you've signed your contract grant award. If you've signed it, it should say executed. Once you have completed those 2 steps, you're done with phase 1 of the ESSER 3 process. You will receive an email notification. The superintendent, the business manager, and the school board president will get a notification saying, congratulations, you've completed phase 1 of the ESSER 3 process. At that time, once you get that notice, you are then able to go into Web Grants and claim reimbursement if you'd like to start doing that. And also, Lisa Johnson has a big stack of capital expense forms. After you've completed phase 1, she can begin processing those capital expense forms because they have to go to Jamie Mertz and myself to review. And so again, we want to get phase 1 done and out of the way so that all of you can focus on the ESSER 2 application. So we have 44 districts left. Make sure you go back and see if you've submitted your ESSER 3 application and you've signed your grant award, and then you'll receive notification.
Lori, is there any way that you guys can email those 44 maybe today or tomorrow so they know you're one of the 44?
Yep, the weekly blast is coming out today, this afternoon, and there's a link. There's a link in there to the 44 districts that still need to complete either or. Those 44, when you see it, you may have completed one step, but not both. So check to see that your initial 3 applications in, or you've signed your grant award contract.
Okay, perfect. And I'll try to pop on there too and reach out to some of you because I know not everybody's here. Some people are going to hit the recording, which will be up and running by tomorrow, but real important. I know there's so many emails. I'd hate to see you miss a really important one. Thank you, Lori. Really appreciate that. Okay. Let's talk about out of school. Okay, so you've got the in-school stuff that you've been doing, but there's still 20% allowable, the 20% set aside can do to a lot of outside of school stuff too. And this is some really neat stuff that you could really benefit a lot of your populations by. So one of them is an after-school programs, helping to address and tie students from low-income backgrounds and struggling students. After-school programs are wonderful, and they help low-income, and they help high-income too. Your parents are at work, you know, and those after-school programs, if you can make them rich and engaging, can only help our kids. Many of you in communities have already figured this out. Target your students needing additional support. If you can, this is a great time for some of that tutoring to take place. And if you can get some of your certified teachers to help deliver some of that tutoring, all the better. I know that lengthens their day, obviously, but you know, we just talked about a little bit about that opportunity, and some of them may be willing to do that. Engaging students in experiential instruction. So hands-on activities are some things that you can do. Taking field trips, doing project-based learning. Those are out of school, maybe it's outside of your brick and mortar, things that you can do that are part of that allowable 20% set aside. Other things, summer school. Well, I don't remember what bill it was, but there was a bill this session that really opened up our opportunities for offering summer school. It's not just for remedial math, reading, and social studies anymore. Now it's all the kids in grades K through 8 in math and reading, and I think 5 through 8 in social studies that you can offer summer school, and they expand that out. Summer camps, academic, social, emotional, and health outcomes. You can partner with people in your community to pull this off. I mean, the school doesn't have to be alone. You can partner with different entities to help deliver some of these opportunities for kids. Work-based learning, community service can all be things that you can set for that 20% set aside. Guys, I know that these are things that you're probably already doing to a certain extent in your buildings. Can you expand it? A lot of times I bet you have said, oh golly, I wish we could do more. This is so good for kids, but geez, there's just no way we can afford it. Now's an opportunity. Youth violence intervention strategies. That's one of the things they listed. I was working on trying to come up with some examples of that. I was unsuccessful in my
we get to brainstorming and we're shooting out ideas, maybe somebody's got something for that. You need some more ideas? I got some more. Okay, partnering with families, parent classes on nutrition, computer literacy, career development. You could have, if you have an LMS system like Canvas, you could pay your health teacher to build out a session for parents and offer a free class to them. There's just so many ways, if you think outside the box, of ways that you can anchor this opportunity to help build out your community. Ensuring that there's tangible benefits to students, offer course credit, apprenticeships, or internships. A focus on relationships. If you can tie something that you're doing to focusing on relationships back to this whole process of acceleration of learning, getting kids back on track with their social, emotional, and academic well-being, those are things you can tag back to the 20%. Enrichment opportunities that help support that. So tutoring, homework help, STEM activities, CTE programs, youth development, physical fitness, health ed. There's all kinds of things outside of school that you could now school support and really help those kids, especially the ones like I mentioned earlier that couldn't maybe afford to be a part of one of those programs, and help them to get involved. Scaling up existing programs that have demonstrated results. We keep going back to career and tech ed and the opportunities that you have to scale that up, because frankly, that CTE budget and the new and expanding programs, that budget line for CTE is always underfunded from the state level. To help support our virtual centers, it's always underfunded. But I think if we expand it now, there's no way the state could come back and say this wasn't a good idea. North Dakota is a STEM state. This is what we do. This is what our workforce is. What an amazing way from the school level to expand it out and truly help our state. Because we're expanding something that North Dakota is all about. Building in frequent program assessment and evaluation. So as you do these things, here's one of the things that they're going to want to know. They're going to want to know the so what. So you did this, why'd you do it? Did you see anything from it? So figure out how you might measure it. Like, okay, maybe it's going to be that, you know, if I did this result mean my kid did better in school? Can you track that? So my kids that were at expanded CTE programs, did they ultimately do better on their math assessment or their STAR assessment? You can tie and triangulate that data and make that deliverable. Okay, district examples. Now I'm excited. Okay, there's lots of good examples out here. I'm calling out a few people, but I already heard some of your stories, and I know you. Maybe not as much as me, but first let's go to Mandan, because I'm going to call you out. So Dr. Bitts, can you give us some examples of what you're doing on the 20%?
I think we're going to do summer school for the last basically go back to July 1 of last year and start counting summer school. Our summer school numbers are up dramatically. We went from almost 300 kids at the elementary level to 400 kids. At the high school, we're up about 20%, so we're going to do summer school. We're also doing a bunch of stuff with social SEL and MTSS, so we're going to be doing professional development, materials, people that go along with that. So basically, that's where we're going with the 20%. We actually have a meeting tomorrow. We had a data dig yesterday with our administrators, and we looked at our numbers and our absenteeism rates, our performance data, and we're meeting again tomorrow morning, and we're going to get specific about how we're going to use those dollars. But that's where we're leading and thinking.
Awesome, that's great. Low-hanging fruit, I love it. So stuff, what you just outlined, stuff they're already doing that they're expanding upon. So critically important. Jason, since I'm here, can I move to Bismarck?
Sure. We don't know what we're going to do. We're going to we're going to do a variety of things, and I was just looking at the list here. Elementary division, materials, resources around core and SEL, subs and buildings, instructional aids. We have pretty heavy in positions right now at the elementary and secondary level. Secondary level, credit recovery, strategists, counseling, additional certifications for some staff, behavioral health, counseling services. Sorry. We did some aid things this year with additional instructional aids, which we found to be highly beneficial, and it reduced our student-teacher ratio. So we were able to do some pretty effective things there, and our administrators really like that. We're looking at some nursing services, some supplemental nursing services. We
Are you hiring that or are you contracting that?
We're hiring them.
Okay.
And then extended contracts for credit recovery at secondary. Student support services, additional staff for smaller group instructions. We're actually partnering with a university to look at additional interns and resident teachers, doing some work with them. We have a shortage in SLP services for our kids, and we've noticed that was a gap for us, and so we're doing that, and we have additional pieces in there. Learning loss in relation to technology and technology support to provide more supports for our educators in the classroom, and then we have some computer things as well.
Awesome. Wow. That's what you can do when you've got a little extra money. That is fantastic. So that you just heard from a couple of our big schools. Let's go to Wilton. Andrew, what are you doing?
So we first looked at our data, our academic data, our cognitive surveys, which went to parents, staff, and students. And then we also take an MTSS self-reflection called SAND. And so all of those pieces kind of pointed towards Tier 1 instruction. And so we're working with Lindsay from the CREA on developing a comprehensive professional development plan for this year revolved around Tier 1 instruction. We're also going to use it then for our progress monitoring tools like AIMS, so that we can track some of that data. We're going to be getting a new school counselor this year, and so having her trained in our social and emotional curriculum, sources of strength, and then our second step program, and then we'll use it for our summer school this summer.
Awesome, Andy. Thank you. So this is what one of our smaller schools is going to do, still pulling off a lot of stuff. I'm going to go to our school out west, Alexander. Leslie.
So in Alexander, we have a program called Accountability Buddies, where every staff member, non-certified and certified, have a group of students that they are advocates for, and they meet once a week for 20 minutes. So we're going to purchase the Leader in Me, which, excuse me, is a social-emotional, it touches the social-emotional learning, the academics, and the leadership side of it. So that PD, I'm trying to con a few other schools into joining me, so my REA can pitch some funds into that professional development as well. And then we are hiring an interventionist that will work with K through 12 for the next 2 years.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I've got Matt back here, Devil's Lake. Matt, what you got going on up there?
All right, so we're kind of breaking it down by our grade levels. So we're starting with our high school, really focusing on credit recovery, looking at an interventionist. We actually hired an interventionist this school year. Went very well. We had a specific class that focused on getting credit recovery, and we had great success with that, so continuing that. Continuing on with our summer school, we'll be extending our summer school into July, and it looks like we'll have very good numbers there as well with our high school. Well, we're also looking at our alternative school and how we can continue to provide additional opportunities within our alternative school and our CTE program as well, so that we can get focus on that credit recovery. Within the middle school and elementary, we're really focused on interventions. We want to hire an interventionist at each one of the buildings to focus on that. We started an SEL program this year, and we want to continue to expand on that. We also want to look at tutoring after school and before school for our elementary and middle school, as well as class size reduction at the elementary level, especially in those lower grades, K1 and 2. We also want to focus on our 0 to 5 students as well. We are actually opening up a child care in Devil's Lake starting next school year, and we want to look at our preschool program and make sure that they're ready come kindergarten. So we are looking at our 0 to 5 as well.
Awesome. Notate that pre-K and those early childhood services are allowable expenses. Supporting those Head Start programs, things like that, thinking outside the box. Where's Justin Fryer? Where are you, buddy? There you are. So here's just a unique opportunity for him. He gets to think about what was I planning for Solon Cannonball before I took the job in Lisbon. So what do you got going on?
So we're going to be doing quite a few different things as well. Some of it's already been touched upon. We've extended summer school, additional 30 days this year. We're looking at after-school programming for next year for all students in grades K through 8. At the high school level, we'll be offering additional after-school programming to students in 9 through 12 for credit recovery. We're also doing credit recovery this year for our high school students. We're adding a social worker position We took a big hit. We looked at our preliminary attendance data with our Native American population. We're down about 10%. We're going to be bringing in social worker, contracted social worker, with CREA to help us get our attendance back on track, particularly at the high school level. We're going to be bringing in an intervention teacher for students in grades K through 12, particularly to focus on math skills. What we've noticed in NWA and NDSA is our biggest hit was in math. I think it has to do with the fact that if you just don't use it every day, you lose it. I think we can all speak to that if we're looking back at high school, we do a lot more than we do today. We've talked with our Education Association about extending the school year. I don't know if we can get buy-in from that, an additional 5 days at the start of the year, an additional 5 days at the end of the year, and then you touched on it, additional learning time, maybe a half hour more on each day. So yeah, those are kind of what we'd be looking at, and then also establishing some pacing guides, some PD stuff this summer with our teachers, really looking at our data and close subgroup gaps for our Native American population, our special ed population, and then the other final one is bringing in an additional special education teacher. We've noticed kind of a hit in that subgroup as well, so reduce caseloads.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. All right, try to get around the stage and grab people from all over. Anyone else got anything out there that you're planning to do that hasn't been so far? Yes.
We've been interested in looking at personalized learning like what they do at Northern Cass. And I did check with Lori Matsky, and we right now have a team of 16 people that includes students, teachers, parents, school board, everybody heading to the Personalized Learning Institute at Northern Cass this summer, and then we'll be arranging some on-site visits and see if we can develop our own model and implement the personalized learning.
Fantastic. I'm going to plug something after that. Trudy, don't forget about Innovation Academy. That's right up the lines of what you're doing. So you're going to go to, if you're interested in that kind of work, taking your team with us the whole year and piggybacking that. I think Dr. Steiner, I'm trying to twist his arm to be one of our trainers with us. It's going to be pretty awesome. What else do we have in the room? Beth. What do you got going in Newtown?
We're really concerned about our teachers' mental health, so we've done a couple of things. One, we've implemented the village for next year. We actually started services with that on June 1st. And then for our students, because our teachers are telling us they have to have July off. They've done summer school in June. We come back middle of August, they said, we can't do anything for you in July. We just need to be cool. So we have contracted with Sylvan, and we're providing transportation and lunch for students going up to the Sylvan Center for July.
Awesome. That's great, Beth. And honoring your teachers too, giving them a little bit of a break. Any other things? Other folks? Great examples. Okay, couple more on the 20%. So the Hunt put out some guidance, and I will include it in the email that we sent out. So at the end of the day today, I'm going to send you a little feedback survey, because with Lori doing sessions at summer conference, she'd really like to know what you need more on. And a part of that email will include just a super fast survey where you can give me a little feedback to give to Lori. And then it'll also include all these links. Now, the Hunt Institute, in my pile of stuff here, this one, they break out each allowable usage and give you a pile of ideas on each and every one. So hint, hint, when you see your idea, you know which one to tie it to when you write your narrative. So this is a really great resource, and I'll get you the link. It's also in here, so you can find it in the slide deck. Providing research-based PD to allow teachers, school counselors, and support staff to shift their lessons if you need to go distance learning or more high-quality learning, so that PD is again emphasized here. Investing in tutoring programs, extending school year, like what Justin just said. Providing information and assistance to parents and families on how they can effectively support our students. You know, we talk about this a lot in the legislative session. The legislature looks to schools to solve all of our community problems, almost all the time. Like, they want us to figure it out. And the big piece is we can't do it alone. But if we can partner with our parents and do a better job, then this is a great resource to do that. Focusing also on low-cost solutions to prevent achievement gaps from widening. Because you remember how, when I talk about low cost, and I talked earlier in the day about, we promised the legislature prudent and responsible spending. There is that guidance, what is it, the UGG guidance? Yeah. that talks about being reasonable with your expenditures, right? So I'm going to talk in a little bit here about more outside expenses, like even ones that support like sport programs and things, because those are good for social and emotional health. But I will tell you, it's not smart to probably put in bleachers for your football stadium as an allowable expense. While I love the idea, I love football, it's tough to truly tie that, right? So, but this afternoon, if that's a priority, we'll show you how to shift some things so that maybe you can afford to do some things with other general fund dollars that you have, but we just need to keep our federal funds targeted on the right stuff, right? And then general funds are called that for a particular reason. They're generally for your use in your school district. So we want to make sure that we find ways to honor your local community in the ways you need to, but really being sure that we keep you on the clean and the straight and narrow with the federal funds. Mental health supports, a lot of these folks talked about, we talked about the village, we talked about purchasing strategies, SEL curriculums, and the PD associated with it, MTSS, AIMS, all of these different things. These can all be part of that 20%. Increasing summer and fall activities for children to combat adverse effects of socialization by promoting socialization, and the English teacher just made a spelling error, and recreation. So as we think about athletics and extracurriculars and drama and music and all of the, because really guys, isn't that why a lot of our kids come to school anyway? Because they're super passionate about music, or they're super passionate about playing basketball, or they're super passionate about whatever it is that they're doing. They like class, okay, but they like their stuff, right? That's what makes them feel whole. For a lot of our kids, that's what gets them to roll out of bed in the morning. It's not because they're super jazzed about learning about algebra. It's because they're jazzed about that they also get to do their passion project in school, whatever that is. Expanding those opportunities is great. It's a great thing. Think about intramurals. Think about expanding musical programs and doing something that's really fun. Think about expanding your drama department, having more offerings for your kids, getting parents involved and volunteering and doing things with them. Lots of things that you can do. And oh, by the way, 20%, because it fits the category. This came straight out of their guidance. This was some of DPI's guidance, and also you had Teachers of the Year that did this fun packet that has all kinds of other ideas for you. If there's one thing you will not walk away from here today, it is not a plethora of ideas. And when we were first faced with, oh my gosh, 20% set aside for this, what in God's name? Now you're going to wonder how you're going to get all the other stuff done that you want to get done, because you have so much great academic things that you know now that you can do with that 20%. And so that flow over can fall into that ESSER 2 category, right? So if your team comes together and you've decided it's a priority, then we can really report back that focus on our kids. Okay, so we've got table chat in here, but we've done a little bit about that already. I want to hit some other stuff before we go to lunch, because then after lunch, we're going to talk about some other stuff. We're going to teach you a little bit more about the business manager's ears are going to really perk up in the afternoon. So we're going to talk about account codes and funds and what rolls in where and how to do this and that. So that's this afternoon. But let's talk a little bit about some of the other. So we spent a ton of time on the 20%. Everything's on the up and up. It's all good. I promise that what we teach this afternoon is completely on the straight and narrow. Promise. So we're going to think practically. Does what we're doing jive with local needs, legislative intent, while remaining in the guidelines? Ooh, that's a lot of stuff to encompass. So, construction and renovation is allowable. 2 days on the ESSER 3 training. It is allowable because it talks about that ESEA guidance, and part of that ESEA guidance, number 1, is impact aid, and impact aid definition of construction allows that, so then we keep bouncing back and forth. But I'm catching on that construction's a little more challenging in the narrative. Am I here? Because I've been hearing, like, ooh, I didn't get my narrative approved. So I think we need to be a lot more thoughtful about our narratives on applying for school construction and renovation and tying it to ESSER. And so I think we'll work on that, and I'll try to help provide some sample templates for you to help you with that a little bit. But I've heard that it's more challenging. I've gotten some feedback from folks. But here's some of the basic ones that are easy allowables, things that help you clean more effectively, right? It all goes back to the sanitation requirements. Things that support physical distancing. Like, I don't know any of you that have an unused wing of your building, but that was something mentioned in the federal guidance. If you have an unused wing, like, I can't imagine any of our communities in North Dakota that are kosher with that. And then you, yeah, but portables would be allowable, and that's something far more common in North Dakota. You need to expand, give yourself a little more space, far more common. There is that reopening handbook. I showed you that earlier. That helps with all this stuff. It's on my file here somewhere, but it's in the link, so you can go to that reopening handbook put out by the U.S. Department of Ed. Here's where I get kind of excited though. So I want you to think harder about this PD thing.
You have to meet those time and effort requirements, which can be very burdensome to do those, semi-annual certifications and time and effort logs. No time and effort information required for anyone paid with ESSER funding. That's not us. That's in the U.S. Department of Ed. They stated that in their guidance, that just your regular accounting records that you would keep for your teachers, your parents, that's all that's needed. No additional time and effort.
Yay, Lord. That's awesome. Okay, let's break for lunch. Let's plan to be back here by 1:15. I'll give you an hour and 15 minutes. There's lots of places to eat around here. We'll see you back in an